In this video, we're going to introduce one of the first models of the course, the production possibility boundary. It's going to look similar to the consumption possibility boundary that we saw in those principles videos, where we're kind of spending our $150 budget on either coffee or pitas. But instead of showing the combinations of goods that we can afford with our budget, it's going to show us the different combinations of goods that we could produce as a society. So let's take a look at an example. So let's look at this production possibility boundary using a classic example where there's a society that's choosing between producing two different types of goods, guns or butter. So guns here is kind of representing military goods, while butter is kind of representing civilian goods. And so what this production possibility boundary is going to do is show us all the different combinations of these goods that our society can produce. Not necessarily which one we're going to produce, but what can we produce. And so the y-intercept will show us if we devoted all of our resources just to butter, how much butter could we produce? Whereas the x-axis is going to show us if we just used all of our resources, so all of our land, labor, and capital to produce guns, how many guns we could produce. So for instance, let's say these are the two amounts. And this production possibility boundary is going to kind of connect these two extremes. So you'll notice that I drew a bow-shaped or a curved production possibility boundary. We're going to talk about that in a second. So just like our example with coffee and pitas, when we were looking at people face trade-offs and an opportunity cost, anything along this red line, our society is using all their resources to produce. These are combinations of goods. So for instance, maybe we have three combinations, one up here, A, maybe one kind of in the middle, B, one down here, C. All these A, B, and C points, we're using all of our resources to produce that. Anything, just like the consumption possibility boundary or that example that we looked at before with coffee and pitas, anything outside of this red line is unattainable. We just can't produce that much with our current level, with our current technology and our current resources. Maybe if our resources increase or change, we could start to be able to get something out there. So maybe that's points E and points F. So notice I skipped D. Well, here's a point D inside this production possibility boundary. And just like our last example, we can definitely produce this combination of goods, but we're not using all of our resources. We kind of have idle resources sitting around. We're not using all of our land, or we're not using all of our labor or capital. So just like our example with coffee and pitas, the slope of this production possibility boundary is going to relate to the opportunity cost of guns, while the inverse of the slope is going to relate to the opportunity cost of butter. So let's just write that down. The slope equals the opportunity cost of guns. And let's start looking at what the bow-shaped nature of this production possibility boundary means. Well, at point A, we're producing a lot of butter, this much butter right here, and just a little bit of guns. And notice that the slope here is relatively small, which means the opportunity cost of producing more guns is relatively small. But notice that as we move down this production possibility boundary, as we start producing more and more guns, the slope of this production possibility boundary is increasing, which means that the opportunity cost of producing guns is increasing. So we're giving up more and more butter if we want to continuously produce more and more guns. So for instance, at this point C that we were talking about before, we're producing a lot of guns and only a little bit of civilian goods, only a little bit of butter. If we wanted to increase our gun production or military production from there, we're going to have to give up a whole lot of butter to do so. Look how steep the slope is at that point C. So what this bow-shaped production possibility boundary indicates is that the opportunity cost of producing these goods is changing. And in particular, this bow-shaped indicates that the opportunity cost of producing something goes up the more of that good that you produce. So if we imagine instead that maybe we have a straight line for our production possibility boundary. So if our production possibility boundary looked like this, notice that the slope is constant along all points of this line. Well, that's going to mean that the opportunity cost of guns and butter are not changing as we produce different amounts of it. So with the bow-shaped production possibility boundary is allowing us to have a changing opportunity cost, while a straight line or a constant slope for a production possibility boundary is indicating that the opportunity cost is constant along all levels of production. In general, we're going to think of kind of a bow-shaped production possibility boundary as a more realistic kind of model than one that has a straight line. And this is probably because we have, different resources are better suited to produce different goods. For instance, we might have great farmland that can really easily produce a whole lot of civilian goods. So at this point, you might have a general idea of what the production possibilities boundary shows you, but it might be difficult to, one, figure out how I might ask you a question about this, and two, kind of understand what we're going to use this model for. So in terms of that first question, we're going to use our live session this week in class to go over the example in the slides. So there's an example with wheat and computers in the slides with actual numbers and a straight-lined production possibility boundary. We're going to go over how we use information to draw out our production possibility boundary and how we calculate opportunity cost with that information. In terms of that second question, what the heck are we going to use this model for? We're going to start using it next week when we look at the next learning module, gains from trade. We're going to use the straight-lined production possibility boundary to talk about specialization, comparative and absolute advantage, and concepts related to gains from trade. So a lot of our examples and applications might use straight-lined production possibility boundaries, but it's really important you understand what the bow-shaped of a production possibility boundary would mean, what it represents, that the opportunity cost is changing as production changes. So just make sure you remember that for tests and midterms and your general knowledge.